How do you feel? Good afternoon. I want to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people as the traditional owners of the lands that we are gathered on today. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the First Nations people as Australia's first storytellers. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Good afternoon, welcome. Welcome to Spineless Wonders storytelling event. This is Queer as Fiction, which is funded by the City of Sydney Libraries program. The stories you'll hear today were first published by Spineless Wonders in the anthology of the same name, Queer as Fiction. We only have time to showcase some of the authors and their stories today, so we've put together a short video to introduce you to all the amazing writers.
Queer as Fiction is a collection that understands what it is to tell stories for us that are by us, and reading it gives me the feeling of coming to a kind of home. This home is full, is teeming with queer language and love, is a home where I recognise myself in the mirror and where people remember my name.
It is spring and my Grindr bio is as follows. Don't be pushy, not into rough, not into dom. My pic is a gritty, forward camera selfie through a shitty mirror in my room. A slim, smooth, shirtless boy in short shorts, books and speakers fringing the mantelpiece. What was it that did it for him? How I said I liked to fuck? How I looked as pixels? Or did I just get lucky? First, to message a fresh face on the banner of the meat grind. What did he like? What did he like? What did he like? In me.
And I'm in the middle of it, sitting still, silently breathing in the toxicity. What difference does it make to collect their stories, I wonder? Should I try and piece them together like a long reverberating tapestry? No amount of precedent and past lives can help me through this process. I know why I'm here. I'm here because I loved. I'm here because I killed.
The night ends as awkwardly as it began, with a hug and a kiss landing somewhere between lips and cheek, the half-made promise to see each other again.
Even now, with 10 years since you last lived here, you still feel unsettled, unable to fit in.
Like the idea of planning a family, buying a bed with someone else, indicated an investment in each other, in the hope of a shared future. It communicated a sense of certainty, a willingness to stick around.
Neon lights blinkered down on Kathmandu's inhabitants as they hurriedly went about their lives, oblivious to the secrets hidden underneath Manisha's mask.
People glance as they pass and say, "Nice boots," or else furrow their brows distastefully, thinking, "What fucking ugly boots." But the point is, they can't help but notice, so I win.
Over the next hour, we are going to hear a number of stories. Some are from the anthology, some are new and work-in-progress stuff from queer writers. We have two actors here today as well to share some of those stories with you. Chris Day, performing as his drag king alter ego, You in Trouble, and Aisling Delahunt. We're going to start with You in Trouble, reading Christopher Marketilli's A Strange Affection, which is set in Sydney's Botanical Gardens. And then we'll hear Aisling perform My Strawberry Tea by Isabel Quilty. Ewan.
Jamie and I sit beneath one of the Moreton Bay figs where, years ago now, we met face to face. An awkward meeting, even as first dates go. Him arriving 15 minutes late, no message or warning. Out of breath, having run from the station, yet somehow still smiling, still charming. For the first 5 minutes he could barely speak, made no apology. Me, overdressed, compared, shirt pressed, wearing a ring I got for my 18th. Now roots of the Moreton Bays enfold us, embrace us, force us closer together, Their fruits, half eaten and strewn on the grass of the botanical gardens, make for an uncomfortable bed, but neither of us complain. The day is too beautiful. Now we sit with a bottle of red, store-bought figs, blue cheese for me and brie for him. Nearby, the ladies' chair, a great uncomfortable slab overlooking the harbour. That first meeting, as we walk the gardens, night has already fallen. Jamie explains he brought something for us to eat that we needed no restaurant. In the darkness, I don't see, but rather sense the cheeky grin on his face. And then he shows me what he's bought. A box of children's cereal, 2 plastic cups swiped from the convenience store slushy dispenser, and a small carton of milk. I frown. No spoon? But we don't need spoons, he tells me, not when we've got cups. Later, after the milky mess of our dinner, he climbs one of the trees, more graceful than I, who remain on the grass looking up after a failed attempt to climb. It has often been that way between us. Jamie goes where I dare not. But sometimes he manages to bring me along behind him. The night ends as awkwardly as it began, with a hug and a kiss that lands somewhere between lips and cheek. The promise to see each other again, but only half made. In the morning, I realise I've lost my ring. Not valuable, but beloved all the same. I message Jamie, but he says he doesn't remember seeing it. The loss of the ring is the perfect annoying end to a night that I already look back on, half embarrassed, half with strange affection. The day brings work, a humdrum occupation in the city, where I find myself wondering why I didn't try harder to climb the tree. Why I didn't laugh at the cereal cups instead of frown. I return to the gardens after work. In the late afternoon, the trees shine with a halo of light. The harbour shimmers. I know I won't find the ring, but I need to look anyway. Surprise on my face when I see him kneeling in the grass, embraced by the swan neck Moreton Bay roots, looking for it too. Thank you.
I enjoy my tea, knowing this cup isn't mine but hers. It's painted with dainty roses, lilacs and daisies. That's what she calls the splashes of colour she's dashed onto the ceramic. Sunlight pours like warm honey onto my skin from a window I can't open anymore. The paint and age of the house has locked it closed forever, so that I might watch the birds outside dance from branch to branch, but can never catch a falling feather. Rain glances off the glass, mimicking the drip of the kitchen faucet. I wait for her to return. I've never been strong enough to squeeze the handle hard enough. My place was always been the artist, and her the pragmatist. My paint strokes drew on the strength of her muscles, the knowing deftness of her hands as she fixed the many quirks and broken pipes of our house. Her paint strokes disguised the old wood of the creaking porch, where I set my canvas down during the pale light of winter dawns. Those winter nights brought fierce storms, and I was the one to hold her. She shivered and whimpered, but refused to admit her fear of the thunder crashing outside our window or the rain lashing the side of the house. More than thunder and rain weighed down on her. I could sense it, but I never asked. I reasoned that if I never asked, then the tension in her shoulders and shake in her hands would go away. For a while, it did, and then it came back the next month, worse than ever, after her mother called her. How long had it been since her mother had called? Not long enough. As autumn turned the backyard to hues of orange and auburn, she made a habit of fielding calls with a cigarette between her lips. The calls became more constant as her mother worsened. She never told me, but I knew. We would share a cigarette on the back porch, kicking wet, dead leaves off the porch. And the silence between us told me everything. We repeated this over and over until another year passed, the phone calls bleeding deep into the night. I had no one to hold and protect from thunderstorms anymore, or anyone to fix the leaking taps. But one afternoon, as rain splattered on our shoes as we shared a cigarette, she finally broke the silence. She asked me a simple question that should have had a simple answer. Should she be the one to look after her mother? I took a sip from the teacup and shook my head. I replied to her with a simple 2-letter word and shrugged. We never talked about it again. To me, it meant all was well. I should have known better. I should have known that those phone calls didn't stop, but she just stopped picking up. She stopped coming to me when it thundered, and instead she hugged a pillow and cooed softly until the weather passed. The taps were never fixed, and they continued to fall apart, one little bit at a time. I noticed but chose not to acknowledge. If I didn't ask where the rest of our cups and plates got to, I could imagine she wasn't smashing them out at the old quarry. If I didn't ask about the rubbish bags of beer cans stuffed behind the shed, I could pretend I didn't smell it on her breath. She'd begun to smell like her mother. Her mother who, when she tried to introduce me, pulled a fistful of hair from my head and screeched that I had been the one to make her daughter like women. She insisted her daughter was a good girl, innocent and faithful, and I had seduced away from the life of a good, honest woman. After that introduction, we moved a long, long way away. So far away, she could only reach us through the phone. It was summer again when the calls finally stopped. I'd been out the back trying to paint again and steady my shaking hand, the cicadas roaring and falling silent when she stepped out and kicked my paints and tub of water over. The water and paints mixed over the ugly veneer of the rotting porch, forming bright hues of orange and red. Hands stuffed in her pockets, she gave the same look her mother had, the one that called me a monster and said nothing. The next day, she was gone. She took nothing with her except for her car and her pillow. My pragmatist went. I remember in the brushstrokes and strawberry tea I drink from the cup she left. The strokes of my paintbrush don't remember her strength or the final look she gave me, but the part she showed me when the storms washed over our home. And as the rain runs down the window panes, the droplets leaking through the glass, I drink my tea and examine what may well be the last thing I ever paint. On the thin canvas, there she was. In our kitchen, she stood making a cup of tea with that wide, dimply smile of hers. In the window outside, it was a warm summer's day.
Thank you, Aisling. That was Isabel Quilty's My Strawberry Tea, and before that we heard You in Trouble, reading Christopher Marketilli's Strange Affection. Ewan's going to return to the stage now with a piece that was written by Quinn Eads called Before He Gets to Your Door. We saw Quinn Eads at the beginning of the author's video earlier, reading from his introduction to queer as fiction. Quinn has sent us an introduction just to flag some of the content that's in this piece. And I'm going to read it for you. I wrote this story in the midst of another big media cycle on gender-based sexual violence, where trans, gender diverse and non-binary people are never mentioned. I wrote it because a journalist at The Age agreed it would be a good op-ed after I pitched it. I wrote it because I was in the aftermath of being raped in my home, and when I reported it to police, I was treated like I had lost my wallet. I wrote it because I wanted young trans men and trans masc people to learn from what happened to me, to know what signs to look for, what inward signals to listen for when hooking up with cis men on apps like Scruff and Grindr. I wrote it with love to all the self who was then and is not now. The journalist backed out, but Bronmean stepped in. So here is a story with all my gay trans love. Quinn. Ewan.
Before he gets to your door. In the brief flicker between Melbourne lockdowns, June 2020, a man who had been messaging me for months on a dating app asked if he could come over. I was unsure about him, his lack of a profile picture, which meant on this app he appeared as a ghost floating inside a black square, disturbed me. The sparse information in his actual profile bothered me. A muffled fright pushed up inside in my throat when I got his message, almost could not be stifled, but was. Think now of a life being trained to ignore my own instincts, to downplay, to dismiss, to submit and to fawn, to be sweet and willing and eager to please as my prime means of survival. Think now, listen to that stifled alarm, that body shiver. See the danger signs, please, please now, before he even gets to your door, my love, see the signs. That night he messaged me insistently with dick pics and invites me overs. When I said I was feeling tired and vulnerable after just moving house, his response was, again, invite me over. After an hour or so, tired, ignoring the signs, mildly curious, trying to explore, I said, okay. I said, okay, let's have a cider and talk about what we might like to do together. Which to me seemed clear. Which to me seemed as if I had said, you coming here to my home is not sex, it is talking and sharing a drink. And 45 minutes later, he was at my front door. Think now of the psychology paper I read recently on a neurological phenomenon known as the doorway effect, where studies show that a person's ability to remember is significantly impacted by walking through a doorway. Think now of this door, of the door I let him through, of leading him from there through double glass sliding doors to my lounge room, of what warnings rang out and then were forgotten in the place between, in the through and in the in and the having been and the will be. Imagine a life lived in the not yet, in the verge. When I opened my front door, there he was, bulky, chin bristling and rough, six-pack under his arm, thick, dirty white-coloured woolen jumper, jeans, boots, blue baseball cap with an Australian flag on the front. Again, that feeling of being troubled, bothered, disturbed. And then the sickening slip that comes from muffling and dismissing repeatedly every internal alarm system that I have that says, run. It's about to happen again. Get out. Fight. Shut the door in his face. Run. It's about to happen again. I think now of marching before I could walk, of being raised by feminist lesbian ratbags in the 70s and 80s who made sure we knew we lived and grew on stolen Gadigal land, of painting a huge Aboriginal flag at aftercare with my sister for Land Rights March the next day, the staff bemused and looking on. I think now that I am yet to meet a patriot I trust or like. Feel the slip slipping again, where slip is the slurry of clay and also the moment that triggers the fall. Feel my terror muffled because don't be judgmental. He could be a nice person. Look, he's come all this way to your door with cider. He even asked you what kind you liked when he stopped at the bottle-o because I let him in. He left an hour and a half, a year, a cycling century, a horror movie later. He left, but not before he had walked around my house and told me it was a very big place for someone who lived alone. Not before he sat on my couch, clothes now on, legs spread, and told me how boring his life was. I was polite while he did this, agreeable, friendly even. I perched as far from him as I could while he drank his cider. Kept smiling, but finally was able, in a pause between his recited miseries, to say I was tired and might need some time to be alone now. He walked out my front door and I locked the screen door. I had never locked it before. As soon as it was closed, but he didn't leave. He's still here, but not in doorways. He's still here in my house. He is behind me if my back is not against the wall. My neck bristles and my throat hurts and I try to stay in the frame in the doorway, out of the way. Out of the way with their nonsensical, these women are our mothers and daughters. Hang on one second, sorry guys. Here we go. But he is in every navy blue sheet that I threw out the next day. He is in the bed I dismantled and put into my shed the next day. The mattress he had flipped and turned me to stone on. He is in the shadow shifted space between front window and camellia tree at the front of my house when it is night. He is the pivot of muscle and bone that is my jaw. 1 year later, it's still hard to eat anything that requires extended chewing, and I find myself still living on cereal and tea and yogurt and soft fruit. He is at my back door looking up at the silver lock. He is inside me, over me and through me. He is around my neck, his hands pushed down. It's my fault. I told him in one message that I liked it rough. Hard and fast, my breath momentarily gone. He was sitting astride me. He pulled his hands away and turned his hands to fists and then made a face that said, "You are lucky I stopped doing that." Dropped his arms, turned me around and kept going. I could not get the smell of him for me days. I could not get the smell of him off me for days. I'm so sorry, guys, this story. I couldn't get the smell off me for days, for weeks, for months. I felt strongly that he had stolen my face. He had stolen my face. I stopped being able to stand in the shower. I sat, I still do, in the cold tile corner, water hitting the top of my scalp and then running down, the sound drowning out tinnitus, not drowning out a voice that says over and over, "You are gone." I sat as long as it stayed hot, tore my heat-softened toenails off one by one without flinching, scrubbed my face, my neck, kept my eyes closed. And now this. Now this vital, again, public conversation about gender-based violence. White cis male politicians no longer able to get away with their excruciating and nonsensical "these women are our mothers and daughters and sisters" revelations in the face of yet another disclosure, yet another woman who carries the burden of proof. I carry the burden of proof too. I carry the reply to my police statement, which said there would be no investigation because there is nothing in your words to indicate that he knew what he was doing was non-consensual. I carry the knowledge I have now about straight men trawling for trans men and trans-masked people on gay dating apps, that these men use our vulnerabilities and transness against us to get and take exactly what they want. I carry the many and devastating stories of gender-based violence my trans and gender-diverse family, friends, lovers, and others have both survived and not survived. I carry my trans queer histories. I attend to creativity and connection and joy. I attend to pleasure and intensities and love the way LGBTQIA plus communities have been doing for longer than we can even know. And now I carry a call and speak from the doorway of the edge of the ledge. A call to remember all of us to bear the load of white toxic masculinity and have lost or are losing our lives because we do not have the body or the gender or the sexuality that our attacker thinks that we should have. To include trans and gender diverse people when discussing gender-based violence, every time, no exceptions, please.
William Shatner vows to save the Great Basin Pocket Mouse. It rained all night in Vancouver. It's always raining in Vancouver. Stella spread the newspapers out on Maxime's mattress. "I don't believe it," she called in outrage to Maxime, who was standing at the stove on the other side of the room making instant mashed potato, pretending to listen. It says here, William Shatner vows to save the Great Basin Pocket Mouse. Maxime made her instant mashed potato in an enormous second-hand wok designed for an industrial kitchen. A weighty, greasy, stained thing that she kept on one of 10 butcher hooks that hung above her bench top. Regarding the necessity of woks for the purpose of instant mashed potato preparation, there had already been a conversation. Isn't the idea that you just add water? Can't you do it in a bowl? And Maxime had said, "What would you know about it? Are you a Canadian now? Are you an expert in the national cuisine?" Her point being that instant mashed potato was a Canadian invention. Her point being that Stella knew this. Canadian versus Australian inventions was a game they played regularly as part of the great entanglement of their breath and bodies. A low, passion-blurred recitation as their mouths pressed against each other's flesh. "Washing machine," Maxime would mumble for Canada, rolling slick and sweat-lipped to mark the imaginary tally board on Stella's thigh with a single clipped-nailed finger. "Penicillin," Stella would reply for Australia, limb-locked and urgent. "Clothes zipper, dental mirror, two-stroke lawnmower, black box flight recorder, Trivial Pursuit, heaving, ute, panting, anti, gravity suit." Stella heard a rhythmic banging from the kitchen. Maxime was beating the potato mixture with a fork. "I don't see the problem with William Shatner wanting to save houses," Maxime said. "Not houses, mouses," said Stella. "They've got nothing to do with him. He's a television actor." "He's a personality," said Maxime, studying with satisfaction the stiff white peaks that rose up from the wok. "And I think you'll find it's mice."
William Shatner vows to save the Great Basin Pocket Mouse. Thank you very much, Aisling Delahunt. That was by Erin Goff, and that piece was published in the microlit anthology Small Wonder. We are going to shake things loose for a minute. We're going to do a bit of trivia before our last couple of speakers today. I'm going to take this out. Now, how I usually do this when I do a bit of trivia is that I just trust you to know whether you've got the answer right or not. We're not going to keep a tally. There's not going to be any sort of policing of your work. You're just gonna know in your souls whether you got the answer right or not. But there's a great prize. Someone's gonna walk away with a copy of the anthology. So there are 6 questions, and if you get full marks, if you come first, and if more than one person gets full marks, there is a second round, a silent, what do you call it? Sudden death round. Silent death round. No, we don't want that. Okay, so there are 6 questions here, and they were on this, but I think they might be at the back here. I think they might be at the back of your sheet. My little question sheet. Were they on your question sheet? That's all right, I'll just remember what they were. Trivia, let's do it. Question 1. This is all queer lit related, of course, because here we are at the beautiful Green Square Library. Question 1 today on the trivia quiz. Guy Ritchie adapted which famous pair of Victorian British characters into 2 of the most queerbaity films of the 21st century? Think of the answer. Do you know the answer in your head? You've got it. Someone's got it. Yes, smashed it. All right, let's go to question 2. Question 2 today is Giovanni's Room, The Fire Next Time, and If Beale Street Could Talk are books by which American author? Are you confident at the back again? They're the ones to beat, guys. That's question 2. Who reckons they've got 100% so far? Between the 2 of you. All right, question 3 today. Which 1997 Annie Proulx short story was adapted into an Oscar-winning film in 2005, film of the same name in 2005. You know it. Do you still reckon you're on 100%? Yep. Is there confidence down the front as well? No confidence down the front. That's okay, because if you don't come first, then you still have had a very nice time at a library. That's pretty good. Can't complain about that. All right, question 4. Park Chan-wook's film The Handmaiden is based on which Sarah Waters novel? Lost. Do you reckon it? Is it still happening?
I have a guess of a Sarah Waters novel.
Great. I mean, how many could there possibly be? Like, there are only 4? No, there's like 7. Are there? I don't know. Someone could look it up. We're in a library. There's 2 more questions to go. Question 5. Christopher Isherwood's novel Goodbye to Berlin was converted into which musical, which act of musical theatre as Krista Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin? So this is a theatre question as well as a book question, really, which is, cheating? Maybe. That's question 5. And question 6. Stone Butch Blues is a fictionalized memoir by which trans author? Do you think you're at 100% at the back?
I didn't know number 2, she did, but I'll know none, but I'm see black.
Cool. So you're part of a team.
The amount of times I've read this book, I should have the name off the top of my head, but I don't.
Oh, you don't have it? There's still a chance for someone else to get 100%, I guess. Does anyone else reckon that they're close to 100%? No. Okay, well, you're the ones then. We'll see. Let's do the answers. If we can skip back to the previous slide. Question 1. Guy Ritchie adapted Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson for some really weird films with some magic realism and quite a lot of complex homoerotic emotions going on. They're making a 3rd one, Exciting stuff. Shaking your head, you're not interested in it? They are, and they're like really old now, so it'll be interesting. It's like the retirement era, Giovanni's Room, If Beale Street Could Talk, and The Fire Next Time are all by James Baldwin. Oh. How are you going? Yes, nice, great. The Annie Proulx short story that was turned into an Oscar-winning film in 2005 is Brokeback Mountain. Woo! Fans of Brokeback Mountain. And Park Chan-wook's film, The Handmaiden, is based on Fingersmith. It's Handmaiden, Fingersmith, very similar. It changes the colonized sort of imperial era from Victorian London to occupied Korea. Very cool. Number 5, Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin. Hey, is that okay? People who work at this library? Yeah, you're happy with that? Sweet. Dad said it's fine. Awesome. Now, this is going to be a buzz round, so I'm going to start playing a well-known queer song on the kazoo. And when you think you know what it is, it might be too loud for me to hear you say buzz. So if you could buzz and raise your hand, and I will say, what is your answer? And then if you get it right, you get the point. And whoever's got the most points, after 5, gets a book. There we go. Are you ready? Here's number 1. Just getting into the groove, sorry. It is! Wow, that was quick. 1 point to you. I Want to Break Free by Queen. That was really fast. That was too fast. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to be a bit further away for this one. Okay. Number 2. You again.
I'm very bad at the name of it though, but it's this one. I don't care.
Correct. I Don't Care by Icona Pop. Didn't even and Charlie XCX. Congratulations again. 2 points to you. That's that. I'm mad that you didn't let me get to the cool bit. Thank you. All right, number 3. Here we go. Yeah. Murder on the Dance Floor by Sophie Ellis Bextor. Very well done. All right. Are you having the best time? Are you in trouble? Am I in trouble? Okay, cool. Number 4. Do you want me to do it louder and more upsettingly? Oh, well, thank you. I've worked really hard at my craft over a long period of time, so I appreciate that very much. Number 4. Oh, close. Yes. Correct. Your song is correct. 1 point to you. Your song, not Song for Guy. We don't know Guy. Sorry. Okay, final one. So those of you who are in with 1 point could be catching up to the person on 2 points, who I think probably already has a copy of the book, potentially. Yeah, very good point, very good point, very good point. Okay, deal. Here we go. It's anyone's game. Number 5. Yes. Faith is correct. Round of wow. So does that mean you're on 2 as well? Oh, you're only on 1.5, I think. All right, should we do a tiebreaker? Okay, one more. But I've run out of ones that I've written down, so we're going to my Spotify playlist. All right, actually, I've got one. Wow, that's not a deep cut, you guys. That is This Charming Man by the Smiths. Oh, should we go again? All right. Oh, the whole thing, the whole 2-minute pop song. Bass player from the Smiths died today, R.I.P. Andy Rourke, very sad, topical, brought down the tone just a little bit. Let's go back to playing music on the kazoo. One more. Anyone's game. No. Carly Rae Jepsen. I guess we are, I'm getting a sense of the demographic. Let me go for something. Last one. All right. Yeah, go. Yes, Bohemian Rhapsody. All right, I think on balance, the winner is, with 2 points. What's your name?
Ellie. But I think someone else has 2 points.
Yeah.
But they were bad points.
The thing is that they are about to get on this stage and do their piece from the book, which they already own. So I've made an executive decision to give you the winner. Ellie, come on up. You're the winner of the music round. Hey, congratulations. Round of applause to Ellie. Well done. All right, so we have got just a couple more excellent readings left to go. We have 2 more treats for you in the final part of today's event. First up, we have the author of one of the stories from Queer as Fiction, Tanya Vavilova, and she's going to share some of her work in progress from her forthcoming novel, which is called, for now, Sludge. Tanya's queer collection, Grub, was also published. It's the green one in the middle there by Spineless Wonders. It's available here today, along with Queer as Fiction. And both of those, because you're super fans and you're here in the room, there's a discount price for you. And then after Tanya, we have someone who's really good at music trivia coming on up. That is the drag king Axel Rod reading Another Good Thing You Can Do When You Have Fire, which was written by his alter ego, Ali Sebastian Wolf. Tanya, do you want to come on up?
I feel like I'm at a slight disadvantage because everyone before me was an actor or a performer and I'm not. I just get to read my own work up here. So, this born performer over here. So 2 characters, Eve and Marisol, they each have a canine companion. Background, might ruin it, might be useful. Eve's dog is called Paul, and Marisol's dog is called Rusty. And also Eve's inner voice features quite heavily here. I'm going to start. Eve watched Paul chase a gull into the shallows, water-like Ovaltine. Like everyone else, she avoided the beach after heavy rain or the benign-sounding sewage outflow events. More gulls squawked overhead, making helix shapes in the sky. No longer able to wade along the bottom, Paul paddled and lunged at a lone gull, missed, snapped his jaw, and the gull rose and screeched. Paul resumed barking and chasing, unaffected by the obvious defeat, tail whisking above the water. Watching him, Eve felt love for all creatures, very briefly. Even though it was early, a dozen dogs chased sticks and balls, their fleece-clad owners in small huddles, either complaining about the cold snap or the new laws. Some wore respirator masks, while others concealed Lucky Charms under their clothes, the ones that became popular after the last outbreak. Dried lavender or whatever was in those sachets wouldn't save Eve. Paul barked. Oh, gross. Eve gingerly plucked the condom from his mouth. Seeing no bins around, she sighed and shoved it in her pocket. Paul raised his caramel brow. Can't you find a nice stick to play with? Paul was not like other dogs. That's just what you believe, Eve. Our dogs, our children, are all made of cells and love. I know, she said aloud, looking at a grey poodle with a continental cut. Most of you sit under the bell curve, even you, fancy pooch with the pom-poms on your ankles. She included herself in this assessment. Mediocrity was nothing to be ashamed of, and yet, wouldn't it be nice to sometimes rise above the throng? Inside a glass and chrome house overlooking the bay, someone opened the blinds. Eve openly stared. Why should she be embarrassed? A cream leather couch, Brett Whiteley imitations, or were they originals? A Balinese stone sculpture, of course, on luscious pesticide-rich lawns draining directly into the sea. High-tech sprinkler system and a long yellow hose neatly coiled. Eve walked on, feet crunching on the sand bulleted with last night's rain. Around her, dogs tumbled and gambled, rippling fur and antenna tails, noses pressed to butts, fights over tennis balls, owners shouting, "Stop and come here," and "Daisy." Eve pulled her coat tighter. The owner of a pit bull was talking about the future of Bitcoin. Gun to her head, Eve, maybe, could have defined Bitcoin. But there was no gun and her mind was blank. She thought about chocolate coins and the price of bread. Paul was leaving dainty paw prints on the tide line, crisscrossing and backtracking, nose alert to invisible missives from the past. Eve imagined it was like walking into a kitchen and knowing that someone had baked cookies earlier in the afternoon. Except you also knew about the spilled oats in the corner, the hands that kneaded the dough. You knew the little sister had lingered by the sink and that she had mud caked on her shoe. Up ahead, Marisol was crouched on all fours, dog park regular. She seemed to be whispering to a terrier, soothing or cajoling, who could say. Her hair made a halo in the winter sun. Eve stopped beside her, and together they watched a kelpie zigzag in the shallows. Marisol indicated the dog cowering under her dress. "Rusty," she tried, trying to entice him out. Rusty bared his teeth. Marisol apologised. He's in a bit of a mood. Eve knew that was a lie. Rusty was a jumpy, snappy fusspot. There were no reports of him ever having been in a good mood. Marisol's nose ring glinted in the sun. "Hey, you want to walk over to those rocks? Over there," she pointed north. "It's a nice view, not as nice as it used to be, but still nice." She laughed at herself. Eve shivered. A walk does sound nice, she said. Since the call centre closed its doors, she had nowhere to be and nothing to do. The wind as they walked tore at their clothes, and it reeked of smoke, not wood fire or ciggies, something chemical, alight. The yachts knocked about in the bay, mangled masts, some bent at 90-degree angles like hockey sticks. They watched Rusty seize and shake a jellyfish, Paul grabbing the other end, and the two dogs wrestling before the jellies broke apart. They walked further along the shore, kicking the translucent donuts with their feet, the dogs running ahead. At the north end, Marisol clambered onto a rock, stretching her hand out to Eve. Sweetheart, go on, take her hand. I know you are sure-footed and strong. This gesture does not weaken you. Marisol's grip was cool and confident. Eve mumbled a thanks. What are they looking at, do you think? Marisol asked. Crouching on the tip of the rock, Paul and Rusty stared at the murky, rippling water. Something's definitely moving. Eve peered closer. Jellyfish? The dogs started to whine. Oh! A silver fish shot out of the water, an iridescent gleaming dart, gliding through the air, then diving deep below. Gone. I can't believe it. They scanned the patch of water for more movement. Marisol shook her head in wonder. A goddamn fish. Last month, Eve had read a news article about a stingery sighting in the Minamara River, an hour and a half south of Sydney. 2 schoolboys in the shallows, a borrowed dinghy, and packed lunch. Dark undulations within arm's reach. The stingery smoothly skating along the riverbed. A sign from the Lord Baby Jesus, the local hairdresser proclaimed. He wasn't at the scene but loved the camera. Nothing since. Walking back over their tracks, they talked about what they'd seen. Marisol was excited, thought maybe the sea was regenerating after all. They climbed the steps to street level, following a couple in matching anoraks, his arm around her waist, a pack of smokes in her hand. Marisol said, "Let's do this again, hey?" "I'd like that," Eve replied. Paul barked his assent. "I don't think I have your number." Eve fumbled in her bag. "Here, let me," Marisol said, taking the phone and punching in her digits. On the drive home, passing half-crumbled seawalls and barrel fires, Eve thought about licking Marisol's ears. Thank you.
Hi. You can buy one of these over here. Oh, isn't it pretty? I'm not gonna lean. I'm too heavy for leaning. This story is called Another Good Thing You Can Do When You Have Fire. Charlotte's bicycle was feeling too classical music today. Not like specific classical. Is this at the wrong height? Did I wait until halfway through to decide? Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. Another good thing you can do when you have fire. Charlotte's bicycle was feeling too classical music today. Not like specific classical, not Chopin or anything, just general classical. It has been since she replaced the spokes with harps. This is, see, this doesn't help if you're a professional. This is why they let me do the makeup, because I actually can't read very well. So I apologize to everyone.
No, you're doing well.
Thank you. Just general classical. It has been since she replaced the spokes with harp strings. It's the playing card that does it. The rapid fire tick, 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 replaced with delicate tinkles, and she feels like she should have dressed in gossamer.
Charlotte's not really sure what gossamer is, and anyway, she's not dressed in it. She's wearing ripped jeans and a faded black t-shirt with a pterodactyl on the front and cuts across the back, so when she leans forward to pedal, you get a small glimpse of unbrad side boob. Or you would if she wasn't going so fast, leaving the trailing sound of a Baroque banquet in her wake. She gets to Denny's via the dentist's backyard to steal an apple from under the possum netting. He hears slow heart plucking as she wheels her bike under his window, and he thinks the stoners next door have finally acquired some taste. Letting her bike fall with tinkling discord where she skidded on the driveway gravel, Charlotte throws the apple into Denny's window. Then her friend is at the door, half smile of suppressing a huge grin and a half-eaten apple slipping from her hand. Charlotte catches it. It's sweet and cold, and she wipes juice from her chin. Ready? And then there's a picture of a bicycle. Denny has a regular bike. Bright orange like toxic waste, but no strange sounds or powers, not even those fluoroplastic toggles that clank up and down the spokes. Though this bike once saw Frank Zappa walking a ferret years after they said he had died, Denny wasn't there and the bike hasn't said anything. It's pretty much an ordinary bike. Denny is not ordinary. Her cloak is loose to cover her wings. She attached them with fencing wire yesterday, and today they are trying them out. She did not sleep well. The corners dug into her skin. You should have taken them off, Charlotte tells her. That would not be taking this seriously, Denny knows. And these girls are taking this seriously. You sound like a fairy princess, Denny yells over the strings beside her. Fairy princess is a badass. Denny doesn't disagree with the girl in the ripped pterodactyl shirt. She's riding alongside her fast enough to see the sides of small breasts and soft flesh over ribs. She is enchanted and keeps watching Charlotte's lips, knowing they taste apple sweet like hers. Her wings hurt, jabbing into her back over potholes. She doesn't say anything. Charlotte is going to be so impressed. They are headed to Black Mountain. Black Mountain is more of a large hill, but it looms blackly over the town because of the bare slate. Nothing that dark and jagged should be called a hill, so the residents named it Mountain, and then they built their houses facing the other way. Respect and acceptance are different things. You sound like a fairy princess, Denny says again, though she is the one with the wings on under her cloak. Badass, repeats Charlotte, and Denny realizes she was hoping Charlotte would notice the irony and say that about her. Charlotte speeds up and the harp strings turn into a high hum like the vibration in a B-movie kung fu temple. Denny is thinking about little levitating bald men when Charlotte rounds the corner and disappears. She tucks her hair into her cloak and becomes an orange blur. These girls can ride. At the top of the mountain, they look down over the whole town. Its back's all turned on them, but these girls are used to that, and the height and scale of the mountain make them feel powerful. They feel an affinity with the mountain of metamorphic rock. What the mountain feels is unknown. It saw Zappa that day too, but has never mentioned it. Its days of heat and passion are done. The girls' bikes are nestled against a tree like nuzzling horses. Denny's gut turns. Now? Asks Charlotte. Now. And the cloak flutters to the ground. She runs, magnificent, wings unfolding like a giant condor, all metal and leather and speed. They rattle in the wind and she feels lift. She feels power, reaches the edge and jumps, and feels the ground of the rock shelf below. Charlotte is jumping down to her. The leather is too heavy. She reaches her friend and untangles her from the wingy mess. Denny checks that she's not broken. Grazes from the landing, piercings from the fencing wire. Not much blood. Bamboo and nylon, Charlotte goes on. It has to be skin. They've had this argument already. Denny will not be shifted. Certainly not with her ankle hurting like this. Ask if I'm all right, Charlotte. No plastic. It has to be me. Charlotte does not argue and does not ask how she is. Charlotte knows how she is. Charlotte knows a lot about her. Almost everything. She knows once Denny gets the mix right, the wings will fuse to her and they will be hers as if she was born with them. She knows this more than Denny does because she remembers how Denny got a tail in year 3 and no university savings were spent on a parade of surgeons and psychiatrists to convince Charlotte otherwise. After that, Denny is not as sure as she thinks she is. and Charlotte is not sure where she will be left when her only friend can fly away. She doesn't ask how Denny is, but she folds the wings carefully and helps her up the rocks. They sit looking over the small backs to them town, full of small town people with small backs to their ideas. It looks quiet. I don't like that place, says Denny. No. She seems sad, Denny thinks. Disappointed, even. Denny wants to tell her that she will do better, that Charlotte is beautiful and will not be let down, but her ankle hurts, and instead she says, "You want me to stop?" Fishing again. Charlotte is holding the wings and looking at her softly. She looks out at the town, or maybe the sky just above it, Denny can't tell, and then back at her and holds out the wings. "I want to be amazed," she says. "Okay." And Denny kicks off the rocks and jumps through time. Denny has been able to jump between times for around 6 months now. She discovered it accidentally and didn't seem to have any control over the timing. Short jumps into the immediate future. It was a secret. She had wanted to save it for some last minute saving the day or something once she'd figured out how to use it properly, but Charlotte seemed so disappointed and she wanted desperately to impress her. The fearless girl who bit the dog that scared Denny when they were 5, who made her a tail, who fought off anyone who teased them with pretend kung fu moves, spelt her name to be like shark and could replace her spokes with harp strings. So Denny jumped through time, but it doesn't feel right. Maybe she had just given away her ace too soon and now Charlotte would never fall in love with her. When she lands seconds later, it is dark on the mountain hill and Charlotte has started a fire. She is wrapped in Denny's cloak, burning little pine cones which spit and hiss. The dancing of the flames make the shadows of their bikes waltz. She doesn't look up. Denny thinks she looks beautiful in the firelight, like a Celtic goddess, but Charlotte's expression stops her from saying anything and she just sits down beside her. On their mountain hill, not touching or talking or looking at anything. They sit for a long time. Charlotte takes out her lighter and puts it away again. Then Denny notices the remains of her wings are in the fire, and Charlotte is crying. And the night stretches. Denny remembers an orange from her cloak. Remember this? She squeezes the rind onto the fire, making crackling yellow flames. She knows Charlotte remembers. Charlotte taught her how not to get your fingers burnt doing it. But it makes her smile. And then it's just the two of them again, huddled under a cloak by the fire on Black Mountain, watching the glowing caterpillars of freight trains in the distance and licking orange juice from their wrists, holding hands in the darkness. Another good thing you can do with fire, Charlotte turns a stick in the embers. The girls look down at the tiny town. Burn it? Burn it. So they do. The end.
Ali Sebastian Wolf, Axel Rudd. Thank you. No more negative self-talk about the reading skills, please. That was absolutely fantastic from both of you. That's all we have time for today. So big thanks to all of the authors from Queer as Fiction and to our special guests, Aisling Delahunt and Ewan Trouble, as well as Axel Rudd and Tanya Vavilova. Got it right that time. They'll be sticking around after the show if people in our live audience, sorry, online audience, but if people in our live audience want to come say hello, do selfies, all that sort of thing. Thank you to the City of Sydney for supporting contemporary storytelling. And if you've enjoyed today's show, you can register for Moon Orchard at Darling Square Library, which is Saturday, the 3rd of June at 2 p.m. The MC for that one is the Filipino comedian Happy Farraran, and the show features stories by Asian Australian writers. The film at the start of today's event was made by Nancy Jan, and you heard music by the local queer muso Emily Hogan as part of that too. Finally, big thanks to the production team, Emily James, Ben Vella, Brian Fisher, Gnu Ballero, and to creative producer and Spineless Wonders publisher Bronwyn Meehan. Thank you everyone who joined us today in person and online. Round of applause for the production team. And have a beautiful afternoon. Bye.
How do you feel?